All right, this is for all my introverts in the back who are not a fan of small talk or networking, whether that's at events or just having any kind of interaction, period. I hear you. I see you. Don't worry, I got you. Okay, I have a little secret for you. You do not have to be the loudest person in the room or the most outgoing for people to listen to you. In this episode, I am talking all about the art of conversation and how to use your voice to command respect, communicate efficiently, and clearly. All right, so in the last episode, I talked about body language and the subtle habits that might be holding you back from making a strong first impression before even saying a word. This episode is all about what we say and how we say it to leave a lasting impression long after the conversation is over, including the science behind charisma. Spoiler alert, it's a combination of two qualities, and something that confident speakers do within 60 seconds of interacting with anyone. So you'll want to stay tuned and find out. Okay, so you don't have to go back and listen to the last episode before diving in here, but if you're curious on how to make an immediate impact in those first few moments, you might want to check it out. I'll leave that there for you. Hey there, I'm Melody Bose, your host of Jeans with a Blazer, a podcast about rewriting the rules of work and life. So I want to talk about why this is such an important skill. So it can quite honestly change the trajectory of your career and your relationships. There is something called the executive presence, and that's considered this thing called the X factor. So that separates individuals who lead and those who linger on the sidelines. In fact, according to the Center for Talent Innovation, research shows that executive presence accounts for 26 of what it takes to get promoted into leadership positions. Now, you might be the most qualified person in the room, and you might be the smartest, but if you can't convey confidence and engage others, then opportunities might just slip you by. On the other side of that, if you're too confident, it can come off as arrogant and unlikable, and we don't want that either. This episode is all about balance. All right, now, maybe it's part of your job to network or build rapport with clients or customers, or maybe you're just trying to come out of your shell a little bit more. Whatever the case may be, understanding the art of conversation will only help you do great things. And guys, that's why we're here. Your parents did not have you and look at you as a teeny tiny little baby and go, oh, I hope this little teeny tiny one grows up to be average, just so average. No. You deserve to have your voice and ideas heard in any and every single room that you walk into. So here we are. When I taught yoga in studios, one of my favorite things to say when students came into my yoga studio was to come in and take up space. Okay, we're going to take up space with our breaths, with our bodies, just with our energy. And I know that sounds a little woo, but it was my thing, and my students appreciated. And something interesting that I noticed is my male students, they did not have a problem taking up space. Okay, they may not have been the most flexible in the world all the time compared to my female students, but they would topple over in a balance pose, and they wouldn't care, or they'd spill their water bottle. It would be just hands flying everywhere. They didn't have an issue with that. So my female students, they would be a little bit more reserved on the onset, and, maybe a little more quiet, a little more mindful, a little more demure. And I noticed that, sometimes they would shrink into themselves a little bit, but not in my class. You're going to come into my class and you're going to take up space. If you fall onto the ground, laugh. Bodies are weird. Humans are weird. Let's laugh about it. If you are doing like a dancer pose and you kick over your water bottle and water gets everywhere, babe, I got you. I will clean it up. You keep doing you. You've been practicing. Good for you. Let's embrace that. Let's embrace taking up space. And really, that's the main theme of this episode, besides balance, is taking up space with your voice. Not necessarily volume, but more intention. So that's how we're going to show up, just like yoga. It's yoga practice, not yoga perfect. So that's exactly how we're going to show up in life, just practicing, always practicing. Starting now with this episode. Okay, so let's talk about charisma and what I like to call the charisma equation. what is that, right? What is that one quality that people just seem to have? You hear people say like, oh, they walked into a room and just, they lit up this room and they were just this most magnetic being. That's a particular skill. I like to attribute a lot of that to charisma. And researchers who study social perception, they say charisma comes down to 2 key traits. Okay. I hope you're sitting down for this one. It is warmth and competence. Groundbreaking. I know. In other words, to be truly charismatic, people need to feel that you are both likable, aka warm, friendly, and trustworthy, and capable, competent, strong, confident. If one of these is missing, then something is off. So think about it. If a person is all competence and no warmth, they might be respected, but they can also seem really intimidating or unapproachable. I like to think of the Daredevil villain Wilson Fisk, right? Like he's a tough guy. He definitely has that presence, but not exactly the warm and fuzziest being. But you also don't want to cross him. You don't want to mess with him. On the flip side, all warmth and no competence can make you very likable, but people might not take you seriously. A good contrasting duo that I like to think embody these 2 traits are Shrek from, the movie Shrek, and Donkey, right? So Shrek is all competence, right? You take him very seriously. But again, the other beings in the forest fear him a little, right? Versus Donkey, Donkey you would want to hang out with all the time, have a beer with Donkey. But I wouldn't trust him with week old milk. So think of those 2 personas. And, if you could combine those, they would actually make charisma an interesting mix. Okay, here's another kicker. So when people meet you, they judge warmth first, often within milliseconds. Okay. We naturally gravitate towards warm people because they make us feel safe, right? They make us feel trustworthy. And it's only after that do we assess competence or strength. So we have just a very narrow windows, these very crucial moments to convey that kind of warmth. And I mentioned something earlier that confident speakers do within the first 60 seconds. I hope you're really sitting down. If you weren't sitting down before, I hope you're like, take another level down and sit on the floor for this, because this is what they do. It's how they say hello. Okay? I know it's groundbreaking, but I'm serious. I want you to do something next time you're out. Okay. This is a spooky little social experiment. So pay attention to the way that people say hello, and you'll never unhear it after this. But then after that, pay attention to how you catalog that person in your mind, and you immediately label them, even if you don't mean to. So we're doing all of that subconsciously, but when you're aware of it, it's kind of crazy just what you can pick up or think that you can pick up on. So we all have our own confirmation biases from our own perceptions and experiences, and those all shape our interactions. So imagine knowing before you even walk into a room that you can set that tone. Just let that marinate a little bit. So I want you to start asking yourself about the intentions that you have before entering any room you're about to walk into, and how you want that room to see you. Another thing is you might approach a room of C-suite executives differently than you might greet a room of, say, interns. And guys, this isn't about being manipulative or deceptive. We're essentially our own PR machines, right? We are ambassadors and representations of ourselves. What we want to do is align the best version of ourselves with what we're hoping to achieve out of our interactions. And whether you like it or not, every single interaction you have has some kind of transactional energy there. And it can be a genuine connection. You could literally just want to forge a friendship with someone, but it can also be strategic if your boss or your colleagues are in the room and you want them to see how you present yourself, how you carry yourself, how you communicate. You want that to be memorable in all the best ways. So we're going to dig in here. Okay, we're going to excavate. We're going to break it down even more into tone of voice and pacing. So we already know that what you sound like can be as important as what you say. Your tone of voice, your pace of speaking, and the use of pauses or fillers all are this concoction that dramatically affect how your message is received and how you are perceived. Think about it. So a confident, respected person, you notice them immediately because, they don't say, hi, how are you? No, chances are they're smiling. They're smiling with their whole face. They're smiling with their mouth. They're smiling with their eyes. They're leaning in. They're making you feel like that you're the most important person in the room, and they make themselves heard by seeing you and hearing you. Ultimately, that's our wish, right? They see you just as you wish the world saw you. And that's it. That's the connection to another person. It's that simple. And reinforcing what I mentioned before, expert Vanessa Van Edwards reinforces that when we listen to someone, we're listening to two things. This is going to sound familiar, but I'm going to repeat it because it's important. We listen to confidence and emotion. Okay? Motion, warmth. So it's a shame that a person could be saying incredibly intelligent things, but if they speak in a very timid or halting voice, riddled with ums or they come off as uncertain. Likewise, a very monotone, lifeless delivery can make you seem disengaged or boring, or even as if you don't care about the topic. All right, so we're going to break it down on another level. How communication inception can we go here? We're going to get there. So to speak in a confident tone, I'm going to break it down for you. You want to pay attention to, guess what? 2 key indicators. You pay attention to your pitch and the steadiness of your voice. So when people get nervous, the pitch of their voice often rises and their voice may quiver a little bit. And to project confidence, you want to aim to speak in the lower end of your natural pitch range with a clear and steady tone. That doesn't mean you have to force a deep voice. Just avoid the uptalk and the squeaks and quivers that can come in. And by the way, speaking of uptalk, what is that? Uptalk is when you end your statements with a question, as if you have an upward inflection, like my name is Susan, and you're questioning if that's your real name. It makes it sound like you're doubting yourself as you're talking. So what does that make other people do? It makes other people doubt you. Instead, I want to empower you to do this. Make your statements sound like statements. I'm saying all of these like buzzwords and they sound so obvious on the onset, but if you don't stop and think about them, you might not realize that you're doing these things. So, okay, make your statements sound like statements. Of course, that's so easy. Mel, can we be a little clearer? Yes, we can. Okay, so you'll want to drop your pitch ever so slightly at the end of what you're saying to convey certainty. And similarly, try not to let your voice trail off into a whisper. If you show up strong and you start strong, we're going to finish what we started. We're going to end strong. Okay? Remember that. Next up, mind your pacing. Not too fast, not too slow, just right. We're entering the Goldilocks zone of conversation, guys. So pacing can signal nervousness or confidence. 2 big extremes there. When we're anxious, we tend to speed up, words tumble out breathlessly, and that can make you difficult to follow and suggest that you're not as confident as you are, and that you just want to get the conversation over with and just run for the hills. On the other hand, an extreme and excessive slow labored pace might come off as lethargic or patronizing. You'll want to aim for a moderate conversational pace with natural pauses. And if you know that you talk fast under stress, consciously reel it in. Consciously slow yourself down, pausing at punctuation and taking breaths. If you think you're not speaking that quickly, dial it back just another step, because I promise you, you're speaking faster than you even think that you're speaking. So something I've always struggled with is I get so excited when I have an idea that I want to share it. I forget to breathe, right? I forget one of the most natural things that we're not even supposed to think about, right? I have to be like a dolphin. I have to consciously take a breath and remind myself to breathe. Otherwise, I will speak so excitedly that I will lose all oxygen, and I have passed out before. That's embarrassing. But anyway, a good trick is to pause for a beat after you deliver, and that will naturally slow you down. So this also emphasizes your point, and it gives listeners a moment to absorb what you said. Another thing that I used to be afraid of was silence, and that I needed to fill the space with words and my voice. No. Take that pause, because one, it shows confidence, name of the game, and it also gives you time to think through your next point. It's almost like a hack. Like if you don't know what you're going to say, just take a pause and then move on. And your brain has time to catch up, right? Because our brain tends to move faster than the rest of us, so we need a little minute to catch up. Another thing, I'm so guilty of this. Eliminating excessive filler words, such as, like, we all use these verbal fillers occasionally, but over relying on them can undermine your credibility. Ooh. In fact, a 2022 scientific review confirmed that excessive use of filler words reduces the audience perception of the speaker's credibility. We all know that. It's not rocket science, but it even impairs comprehension of the message. That's a problem. That's a real problem. Why? Because fillers make it seem like you're unsure and unprepared and you're searching for your words, and they can become distracting. People can, count your ums or your nos. So instead of focusing on your content, they're focusing on your fillers and how you're questioning yourself. Guys, it is absolutely okay to take a pause to gather your thoughts. Just try and do that in silence rather than filling the space with just unnecessary filler. Now, the irony is not lost on me. Do not go back and listen to episode 1, please, because there's a lot of ums going on in there. We're growing. This is a podcast about growth. Here we are. Okay, we can also use vocal variety and emphasis. A dynamic voice holds attention, tone modulation, changes in pitch, volume, and speed that helps convey emotion and keep your speech interesting. For example, speak louder with higher inflection when you're excited or highlighting an important takeaway, versus a more grounded and deliberate tone and pacing when you're discussing a very serious matter. And the thing is, it's really cool, is that people will usually match your energy. So if you have an idea and you want people to be excited about that, bring that energy to the conversation. It's really interesting to see how it's like a mirroring effect, right? We want to be seen, heard, and understood. So when someone comes in and excited, you're like, well, I want to be that excited person too. What are we talking about, guys? Cool. And one thing I also want to emphasize is don't get discouraged if people do not mirror you. People tend to, but things like nerves or their general demeanor or even things like culture might not give you that validation. So my mother is very German, and she is wildly unimpressed by everything except for her Doberman and the QVC channel. That's it. Me sometimes, but there's not a whole lot she gets enthusiastic about. So if I'm excited and I bring her an idea, I don't necessarily get that validation, but that's okay because I know my idea is great. Thanks, Mom. So again, you do not need that validation of others. The whole point of confidence is that it comes from within. And if you are so sure about yourself, then you don't need anyone else to mirror you, whether that's a friend, a colleague, a parent. Okay, so I've been talking a lot about the negatives in these speech patterns and things that we have, but beyond avoiding negatives, there are some positive vocal habits that we can use to convey confidence. One habit you can adopt is speaking in statements rather than hedges. Okay, I'm going to call myself out on this one. That's a jargon jar. So a hedge is a word or phrase that softens or qualifies what you're saying, often out of fear of sounding too bold, being wrong, or offending someone. Here are some common hedges. I think maybe this might be a dumb idea, but I'm not sure, but I was kind of thinking, right? We want to trim those hedges. I brought that metaphor right back around. Did you see that? Okay, cool. We're going to roll with it. Okay, so we're going to apply that, and I will walk you through some statements versus hedge examples side to side so you can see how you can reframe those. So a hedge. I'm not sure, but maybe we could try approaching it from a different angle. A statement. I recommend we approach it from a different angle. Okay, there are a lot less words in there. There's no fillers, and there's no question at the end of your statement. Another hedge. I just kind of want to add something small, a statement. I'd like to add a thought to the conversation. There is no thinking that you want to do something. There is no small in anything about that conversation. Even if what you're contributing is a small idea, every idea is your best idea. You are a rocket scientist in whatever you're doing. No idea is too small, okay? All right, next, another positive habit is breathe and support your voice. When I used to teach yoga in studios, I would notice people breathing very shallow in their chest, especially if all my students were laying down in Shavasana. You could see their chest rise and fall. And this is such a unique behavior that is learned, and it's a behavior that most of us do. But if you happen to know a baby or know someone who knows a baby, next time you see one, look at their bellies when they breathe. Babies, they've got it all figured out. So they breathe from their stomachs, and like you see their little tiny bellies like rising and falling. And we lose that over time. And I wonder if that's just nerves or anxiety or just the wanting to just speak shallow in our chest. And what's crazy is proper breathing is like the backup dancer to good speaking, right? So if you get breathless or shaky, we know that it will affect our tone. So you'll want to practice breathing from your diaphragm, your belly area. It's right below your rib cage, right here in the center, right beneath your sternum. And it takes practice, right? Because we grow ourselves out of these behaviors. But when you speak from your diaphragm, you kind of engage your core a little bit. Your voice carries a little bit more. All right, so how do we practice all of these good habits? Well, we do by doing. So first of all, by breathing. Amazing. You're doing a great job. You're halfway there. Just breathing a little bit more consciously. And I can make another video about how to breathe from your diaphragm, but there's a bunch of stuff out there already if you want to check that out. So before you speak in a meeting or presentation, just take a beat. Just take a couple slow, deep breaths and just allow yourself to steady your nerves. So even if you are nervous, even if you're like, oh, I breathed, I did my job, but I'm still nervous. It doesn't matter. You're building those new pathways in your brain, and you're teaching yourself to practice to breathe and give it time, right? Just like building muscle, it takes practice. Next up, how you react and respond to questions. So I talked a lot in this episode about how you assert yourself in conversations. Now I want to switch gears a little bit to how you react to praise or questions. So this is so fascinating to me, but how you respond when someone praises you or gives you a compliment, and how you handle direct questions, especially about your own work or achievements, that can influence whether you're seen as a confident and self-assured person or insecure and self-deprecating. So a lot of people have a habit of downplaying their accomplishments and deflecting compliments. And this is, usually purely out of humility or maybe sometimes discomfort. But I'll be super transparent with this. And my girls, I promise I am not coming for you, but I see this a lot more with women than with men. And I think a big part of that is the cultural norms, because women are generally in Western culture taught to be more reserved and apologetic and accommodating. And over time, that depletes your confidence, and it creates a disconnect where you feel undeserving of the greatness that you are, of the praise that you're receiving? Question mark? And you feel like you have to apologize for things that you're not sorry for. It ends here. So while modesty can be commendable and very humbling, excessive self-deprecation can backfire in professional and social settings. We don't even need to go into it. We kind of know how this story plays out, right? So now let's look at why it's important to accept praise and answer questions with confidence, and how to do so with grace and ever so effortlessly. All right, so the impact of deflecting compliments. Imagine, let me transport you to a visual here. Imagine you just gave a major presentation and a colleague says, great job on that project. If you respond, oh, it was nothing, I probably could have done better, you might think you're being humble, you sweet little slice of humble pie, but consider it from the other side. you're essentially rejecting the compliment that that person gave you just by saying that. Psychologically, dismissing or deflecting praise sends the message to both yourself and others that you don't believe that you deserve it. Over time, if you constantly downplay this, then you'll start to believe it yourself, and you convince others too. Look how powerful you are. You can convince yourself that you don't deserve something and convince other people of the same thing. So imagine if we flip the script on that. We're going to do it. Okay. All of that can reinforce imposter-like thoughts, I'm not good enough for this, and project a lack of confidence. Now, my friends, you are not alone if you feel like this. In fact, research has found that around 70% of people feel uncomfortable receiving compliments. So if accepting a compliment makes you cringe, chances are the other person does too. Okay, so I like to approach this by saying exercise your receiving muscles. So how do we respond to compliments confidently? The key is, again, I'm going to bring it home. The key is to strike a balance between humility and acknowledgement. You can be gracious and appreciative of others' recognition without coming off as egotistical. Here are some tips. Okay, this is another groundbreaking content moment. Ready? Simply say, thank you. That is a full sentence. It is the easiest and often the best response because a straightforward thank you, I appreciate that, or, getting a little crazy here, thank you, that means a lot. That shows that you heard the compliment and value it. So hard stop in that moment, okay? Avoid the sensation to immediately downplay it, like, it was nothing, or flip it around, deflect by returning a compliment right away. No, you're it was all you, you're super talented, but I did the whole project. You were literally you were sitting there and watching me. So, we don't want to do that, after accepting. So you could say something like, thanks, the whole team really put in a lot of effort here, and I'm really proud of what we did. You hear that? So the important part is to just don't deny the compliment or shrink back from it, someone is offering you a poison apple. All right, if you are fighting me on this and you are still struggling with accepting compliments, I get it. And to that, I raise you a challenge with an objection. Okay. So we can reframe all of that. We can reframe how you view compliments. If you struggle with feeling worthy of praise, it might help to reframe your compliments in your own mind. So instead of thinking, they're just saying that to be nice, or they must not notice my mistakes, remind yourself, compliments are gifts and positive feedback. It's data points, guys. All it is collecting information. You don't have to assign a feeling or emotion to it. It's not necessarily good or bad. It's just a piece of information that you can file away. Okay, great. Thank you. Now, if you're a chronic people pleaser, I have not forgotten about you. This tip is going to absolutely change your life, even if you're not a people pleaser. If you recognize that accepting a compliment is a gracious act on your part, it honors the person's recognition and reinforces positive behavior for everyone involved. So you're not being arrogant by saying thank you, you're completing a social loop. Crazy. You can empathize, right? So most likely, even if you're, every fiber of your being is cringing that you just received a compliment, it's still somewhat a validation. So I know that was just a lot, but if you want to start practicing it, it's super easy to don't do it with somebody that you know, but try with complete strangers. So if the idea freaks you out completely, I get it, but also you're going to have these interactions anyway. Let's make it fun. Let's gamify it. Let's make it a little game. It keeps life fun. When you go to the grocery store or the gas station, step into that identity that's simply an extension of yourself and practice your hellos. Just give yourself one assignment, right? Just make it as simple as possible. And then maybe you can, go out and do two. But start by practicing your hellos. Start by leaning into the conversation. If someone compliments your shoes or your bag or anything, thank you. Okay? The grocery store. If someone is in your way and you say, excuse me, okay, are you apologizing because they were in your way? No. You are asserting yourself in a respectful and polite but firm manner, okay? So as you're doing this, make a mental note of how you're communicating, and then also make a mental note of how people are reacting to you, right? So if your one interaction with the gas station teller is a big hello in a way that, you're speaking from your diaphragm and you don't normally do that, see how they respond to you versus how they might normally respond to you, or how go to another gas station immediately and then try it a new way and just see what happens. It's fun. Life, it's all a game. So yeah, give all that a shot and let me know how it goes. Send me a DM, Jeans at the Blazer, on all social medias, or hello@jeansattheblazer.com. That's all for today, guys. See you next time. That's a wrap on this episode of Jeans with the Blazer. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, a mindset shift, or just the push you needed, do me a favor. Subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Leave a review wherever you enjoy your podcasts. It helps more people find it, and it keeps these conversations going. And I love hearing from you. Follow @Jeans with the Blazer and tag me with your biggest takeaways, your latest wins, or just tell me what topics you want to hear about next. See you next time.